For centuries, the ruins told a simple story: burned stone, collapsed roofs, streets choked with ash. An ancient city destroyed in war, abandoned to time, another silent casualty of empire. Archaeologists cataloged it, historians referenced it, and textbooks summarized it in a single line: conquered, burned, forgotten. But history is rarely that simple. When researchers began to look closer, they noticed something unsettling, something that didn't belong, something that suggested not chaos, but control. This was not the aftermath of panic. This was not the signature of a sack. This was something else entirely. This was a city that had staged its own death. In the ancient world, cities lived under constant threat. Borders shifted like sand. Empires expanded, collapsed, and expanded again. To exist was to be noticed, and to be noticed was to be targeted. Cities were not just settlements. They were prizes. They represented wealth, labor, legitimacy, and strategic control. A captured city could fund wars, supply armies, and secure trade routes for generations. The city in question sat at the intersection of power. It was not the largest. It was not the most famous, but it was valuable. Caravans passed through its gates carrying metals, textiles, grain, and ideas. Taxes flowed steadily. Its people lived well, quietly prospering under the illusion that obscurity would protect them. It didn't. The warning signs came slowly, as they often do. Merchants returned with troubling rumors. Roads became less safe. Foreign envoys arrived, polite but probing, asking about defenses, population, supplies. Soldiers were spotted in regions where soldiers had never been before. Maps were redrawn. Alliances shifted. The city's leaders understood what this meant. An army was coming. They gathered in council chambers lit by oil lamps, surrounded by stone walls that had once felt eternal. Now those walls felt thin. Their generals spoke honestly. Their soldiers were brave, but few. Their fortifications were strong, but outdated. A siege would be long, brutal, and ultimately futile. Resistance meant annihilation. Surrender meant survival, but at a cost that would erase the city's identity forever. Tribute would drain its wealth. Hostages would be taken. Temples would be repurposed. Records rewritten. Within a generation, the city would still exist in name, but its people would not recognize it. Faced with extinction, the council made a decision so radical it bordered on madness. They would vanish, not flee in panic, not scatter in chaos, but disappear deliberately, collectively, and convincingly enough to fool an empire. The plan unfolded over months, disguised as normal life. Markets stayed open, temples remained active, guards continued their routines. To the outside world, nothing appeared wrong. But beneath the surface, the city was hollowing itself out. Families were instructed quietly, household by household. Departure times were staggered. Routes were planned carefully to avoid suspicion. No mass exodus, no caravans. People left in pairs, in small groups, at night, at dawn, during festivals when movement was expected. They went to villages, farms, forests, neighboring cities. Some crossed borders. Others stayed close, hiding in plain sight. Only what could not be replaced was taken. Religious icons, legal records, lineage documents, tools of trade. The city's wealth was not buried beneath floors, as was common in times of crisis. It was removed entirely. Food stores were emptied slowly. Granaries that should have been full were quietly drained. Livestock was moved out or slaughtered and preserved elsewhere. Wells were left intact, deliberately so. A city without water looked like a city abandoned in haste. This one needed to look abandoned after violence. Then came the most dangerous phase: destruction. Fires were not set randomly. They were calculated. Upper floors were burned so that roofs collapsed inward, crushing what lay beneath. Storage buildings were destroyed first, mimicking looting. Administrative centers were damaged enough to erase records, but not enough to suggest careful dismantling. Walls were breached from within, creating the illusion of an external assault. The streets were left empty. No bodies, no screams, no signs of last stands, just silence and smoke. When the invading army finally arrived, they encountered exactly what they expected to find at the end of a hard campaign. A city already broken, already stripped of value, already dead. There was no resistance, no ambush, no defenders to fight, no treasures to seize. To an army marching on limited supplies, this mattered more than pride. Why waste time occupying ashes? Why garrison a corpse? They recorded the city as destroyed and moved on. And in doing so, they sealed the deception. For years, the ruins sat untouched. Travelers avoided them, believing them cursed or dangerous. Soldiers bypassed them, uninterested in rubble. Nature reclaimed the streets. Wind erased footprints. Rain washed soot deeper into stone. The people of the city lived on, scattered, changed. They adopted new names, new dialects, new customs. Some married into other communities. Some became merchants elsewhere, carrying fragments of memory they never spoke aloud. Their children grew up hearing stories of a city that no longer existed, a place they could never return to, and history forgot them. Or so it seemed. Centuries later, scholars began to question the narrative. Ancient records mentioned the city, then fell silent. No triumphant inscriptions claimed its conquest. No king boasted of its fall. No mass enslavement appeared in census lists. This absence was strange. Empires recorded victories obsessively. Silence often meant failure, or something worse. Excavations raised more questions. The destruction layers were consistent, but too orderly. The burn marks followed patterns, not chaos. Valuable objects were missing, not smashed or abandoned. There were no emergency hoards hidden beneath floors, a common behavior during surprise attacks. Most telling of all, there were no bodies. Cities fell violently. People died where they stood. This city had none of that. What archaeologists saw was not defeat. It was choreography. The city had not been destroyed in a single moment of terror. It had been dismantled with patience and foresight. Its death was a performance staged for an audience of soldiers who never realized they were watching a play. The implications were profound. It meant that the city's leaders understood their enemy better than the enemy understood them. They knew how conquerors thought, what they expected to see, what signs they trusted. They exploited those expectations perfectly. In a world ruled by force, the city had chosen illusion. Its survival came at a cost. The people lost their home, their monuments, their continuity, but they avoided slaughter. They avoided enslavement. They denied the empire its prize. And in doing so, they achieved something rare in ancient history. They escaped conquest entirely. Over time, the truth faded into legend. Later cultures told stories of a city cursed by the gods, wiped out overnight. Others spoke of divine punishment, of fire raining from the sky. These myths replaced reality because reality was too unsettling. It suggested that humans, not gods or kings, had orchestrated the outcome. The city's greatest achievement was not its wealth or architecture, but its disappearance. Because empires thrive on visibility, on targets, on symbols of dominance. And this city denied them all three. It refused to be conquered by refusing to exist. And that may be the most powerful act of resistance the ancient world ever produced.